Hello, my name's Rachel Heggie. I'm going to be reading the Reign of Law excerpt. People are given to thinking and speaking of the national government as the government. They demand more from it than it was ever intended to provide. And yet, in the same breath, they complain that federal authority is stretching itself over areas which do not concern it. On one side, there are demands for more amendments to the Constitution. On the other, there is too much opposition to those that already exist. Without doubt, the reason for increasing demands on federal government is that the states have not discharged their full duties. Some have done better and some worse, but as a whole, they have not done all they should. So, demand has grown up for greater concentration of power in the federal government. If we will fairly consider it, we must conclude that the remedy would be worse than the disease. What we need is not more federal government, but a better local government. Yet, many people who would agree to this have large responsibility for the lapses of local authority. From every position of consistency with our system, more centralization ought to be avoided. The states would protest, promptly enough, anything savoring of federal usurpation. Their protection will lie in discharging the full obligations that have been imposed on them. Once the evasion of local responsibilities become habit, there's no knowing how far the consequences may reach. Every step in such a progression will be unfortunate alike for states and nation. The country needs, in grappling with the manifold problems of these times, all the courage, intelligence, training, and skill that can be enlisted in both state and national administrations. One insidious practice, which sugarcoats the dose of federal intrusion, is the division of expense for public improvements or services between state and national treasuries. The ardent states' rights advocate sees this practice as vicious, weakening of the state system. The extreme federalist is apt to look upon it in a cynical fashion, as bribing the states into subordination. The average American, believing in our dual sovereignty system, must feel that the policy of national doles to the states is bad and may become disastrous. We may go on yet for a time with the easy assumption that if the states will not, the nation must. But that way lies trouble. When the national treasury contributes half, there's temptation to extravagance by the state. We have seen some example in the connection with the federal contribution to road building. Yet there are constant demands for more federal contributions. Whenever, by the plan, we take something from one group of the states and give it to another group, there is grave danger that we will do an economic injustice to one side and a political injury on the other. We impose unfairly on the strength of the strong, and we encourage the weak to indulge in their weakness. What America needs is to hold to its ancient and well-charted course. Our country was conceived in the theory of local self-government. It has been dedicated by long practice to the wise and beneficent policy. It is the foundation principle of our system of liberty. It makes the largest promise of freedom and development of the individual. Its preservation worth all the effort and all the sacrifice that it may cost. It cannot be denied that the present tendency is not in harmony with this spirit. The individual, instead of working out his own salvation and securing his own freedom by establishing his own economic and moral independency by his own industry and his own self-mastery, tends to throw himself on some vague influence, which denominates society and to hold that in some way responsible for the sufficient of his support and morality of his actions. The local political units, likewise, look to the states, and the states look to the nation, and the nations are beginning to look to some vague organization, some nebulous concourse of humanity, to pay their bills and to tell them what to do. This is not local self-government. This is not American. It is not the method which has made the country what it is. We cannot maintain the Western standard of civilization on that theory. If it is supported at all, it will have to be supported on the principle of individual responsibility. If that principle be maintained, the result which I believe America wishes to see produced inevitably will follow. There's no other foundation on which freedom has ever found a permanent abiding place. We shall have to make our decision whether we wish to maintain our present institutions or whether we wish to exchange them for something else. If we permit someone to come to support us, we cannot prevent someone coming to govern us. If we are too weak to take charge of our own morality, we shall not be strong enough to take charge of our own liberty. If we cannot govern ourselves, if we cannot observe the law, nothing remains but to have someone else govern us, to have the law enforced against us, and to step down from the honorable abiding place of freedom to the ignominious abode of servitude.